Fine today. Highs will top out in the upper 80s. 67 right now. Next news, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. And on substance, I think Joe Biden should have stuck with plagiarizing Neil Kinnock. However, on style and presentation, I think it's difficult to not concede that he cleared the very low threshold that was set for him by both the D.C. press corps, generally speaking, as well as, and I continue to be astonished by this, President Trump and Republicans. I don't know why you want to lower expectations for your opponent, but that's what they did. That's what they've done. I like what President Trump was saying more yesterday, where he's focusing on a world under Democrat socialists that will dominate the Biden administration as compared to his beliefs and approach to matters like law and order. Here's Joe Biden's closer, the big takeaway.
Is it dark out or light?
Once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. This is our moment to make hope and history rhyme. With passion and purpose, let us begin, you and I together, one nation, under God, united in our love for America, united in our love for each other. For love is more powerful than hate, hope is more powerful than fear, and light is more powerful than dark. This is our moment. This is our mission. May history be able to say that the end of this chapter of American darkness began here tonight.
I think he went from plagiarizing Neil Kinnock to plagiarizing Shel Silverstein from Light in the Attic.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was the closer.
And CNN said that, this was a hopeful message in anxious times, and Joe Biden made the pitch to claim the soul of the nation.
I know.
Oh, my God. It wasn't that
That was a phrase that
powerful.
was used all week. It's hope is better than anxiety. Good is better than bad.
Light is
Light
better
is
than
better
dark.
Right. I
Because
mean,
you can't see when it's dark.
okay. So what the top line takeaways, did it accomplish, the DNC accomplish what Joe Biden hoped it would for him as we move into the RNC next week? Let's start there with our friend Bret Baier. He is Fox News anchor. See, I can rhyme too, Joe.
Yeah.
Fox News anchor and #1 best-selling author of 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. Bret, thanks for being with us.
Morning.
So, what's the sort of beltway handle on how the week went for the Democrats?
Overall, well, that speech last night, I think to your point on style and delivery, was the best Joe Biden has done. I mean, he's had some kind of lackluster speeches in the past, including in this campaign. But that one had energy. There was a little bit of poetry. Mario Cuomo used to say, you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. I think there's a lot of questions about what governing would look like under Joe Biden. But what he's painted in this kind of very wrapped up convention is something that can attract, especially, independents, suburban families, and that is a more unity pitch. And, what has happened this week because of COVID and because it was all virtual, it enabled the party machine to essentially stick on message. He's a very decent guy. Here are all these stories. Yes, there's a left and right of the party, but we are all together, and then dismount with this speech. So all in all, the week was exactly what the Democrats wanted.
Yeah, but what do you think was missing from Joe Biden's speech?
Well, I mean, he didn't address any of the violence going on in cities, any place. It could have been a hat tip, a little line. He didn't talk about China once this whole convention. I think China came up 2 times in passing. And both of those topics are going to be big with the RNC next week. I think, this was more about getting through this week without any stumbles. Mm-hmm. And you're right, the bar is low. And it was in part set by President Trump.
And he didn't mention anything about schools reopening and the need to get our kids back into classrooms, which I thought was a big mistake.
I think, yeah, I'm thinking back to the speech. You're probably right. There was some kind of reference generically, but I mean, they've spent a lot of time on COVID overall this week, and it was the big part of the beginning of the speech last night.
Right. They spent a lot of time on COVID, blaming Trump for the consequences of policies they support.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's maybe a couple of things that they mentioned over the week that the administration is not doing, but they're doing pretty much everything else. And, you know, so I think there is this sense that there is a vaccine on that may be coming, and maybe the announcement of that is going to come before the election. And there's a little bit of fear about that and what that means from a Democratic perspective, which is why you have these statements like there is no vaccine for racism from Kamala Harris, and you have
you know, metaphors.
Things that kind of say it's not just getting to the vaccine.
So what's the plan for next week, and where are you going to be located? You're going to be...
So I'll be in D.C. You know, the whole thing is going to come out of the logistics will come out of Charlotte, much like this came out of Milwaukee. But everything the president and the administration are doing will come out of Washington, and then obviously Thursday night we'll be at the White House. So that'll be quite something on the South Lawn, and I think it'll feel or look different. The Democrats were very concerned about the image of COVID and what that meant. I'm sure there'll be some concern next week, but it's going to be a little different.
Yeah. Spoke with comms advisor Ben Williamson earlier in the program, and on the topic of any prospects for some sort of COVID-19 phase 4 relief beyond the executive orders the president has already issued before November 3rd. And he suggested some optimism. Nancy Pelosi's coming off some of her demands where there's real impasse, like the $1 trillion bailout of states and cities and so forth. I just don't see why she would. I don't see that she ever wanted to. So, I mean, is that just sort of wistfulness on behalf of the White House? Is there any real prospect that you're going to get anything done? Is there any real interest, even among a lot of Republicans, on dropping another $1 or $2 trillion?
I think Republicans want to get something, even if it's a small, skinny package, as they're calling it, through, in part because there are Republican congressmen and senators who need to be touting something back home for their reelection prospects. But, you know, there's a lot in this convention spent about how Joe Biden can make deals and work across the aisle. Well, he's the party head now. There's no reason that he couldn't get involved and say to Nancy Pelosi, let's make something happen here. So there's a choice being made. I don't think the prospects are that good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point you make, too, about Biden, which sort of speaks to how the Wall Street Journal characterized him after the speech, which is he's more of a figurehead for the party rather than a leader of the party. And that's a distinction with a difference because it really plays into the other characterization, not the Sleepy Joe stuff, but the other characterization of the Trump campaign that seems to be more on point, which is this is a guy who is going to be beholden to the center of gravity in the party. And his choice of Kamala Harris speaks to where the center of gravity is, which is far, far left, the AOC base, I would argue, of that party. That's who is actually going to be driving the agenda.
Yeah, and I think the Democrats worked hard to counter that narrative. And I think that they did in what was said, what was presented. The fact that Mayor Bloomberg was one of the late speakers before Biden, I mean, that says everything you need to know. I mean, if he was in a stadium with actual delegates, he may get booed.
Yeah.
And that's another benefit to the virtual aspect of this for the Democrats.
Now, were you surprised to see Hunter Biden on one of those pre-produced videos that they had last night?
No. I think, they wanted to put him out there just almost to say, we're not afraid of this. And, what he was talking about was the decency of the man. There are plenty of examples of that.
Right.
I mean, he's a decent man, and he's actually
so is his wife. His wife
really
seems
nice
lovely.
guy, and his wife is really lovely, and he's done a lot of things for a lot of people who are going through tough times. Can that translate to fighting and making sure the left of the party doesn't take over the policy shop? I don't know.
I keep hearing this from the people on the other side of the aisle in the media, including Andy Kroll, spoke with from Rolling Stone magazine, that the only concern that they have, they otherwise feel very confident in the position they're in. They're not concerned about the violence in big city America. The only concern they have is, can they keep this disparate coalition together? The squad, on the one side, Bernie Sanders there with the squad as well, and Bloomberg and all these other elements of the coalition that are stitched together more on what they're against than necessarily what they're for. That's the only concern they have in terms of their path to victory. That seems to be sort of taking hold as groupthink among the left. And I wonder if you're seeing the same thing, because if that's true, I think they're vastly underestimating some of the salient issues that are front and center right now, both with respect to violence and with respect to the virus.
I agree 100%. And I think that President Trump is much better positioned to go substance by substance point to counter what Biden administration would look like he did yesterday in Pennsylvania. But I do think that that's their main concern. And I think that, they effectively dealt with that. And so far, the duct tape is holding, and that is the unity is to make sure Donald Trump is not in office. And right now that is so powerful to the Democratic Party that, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Mike Bloomberg and Amy Klobuchar are all singing from the same sheet of music.
All right, before we let you go, since you talked to Attorney General Barr, and I'm sure he shares secrets with you that aren't always made public, so you can share them with us.
Yes.
So tell us, when the Durham report is going to be finalized, what's going to come out, when Comey's going to be indicted, the concurrent U.S. Attorney investigations that are going on in the same space too, with the unmasking of Flynn. People forget about that, for example. What's your sense of, after the plea bargain last week with Kleinsmith, the trajectory of this and Barr's commitment, again, public commitment, including in an interview with you, that the story at minimum will be told between now and November of what happened in 2016 into 2017?
Yeah, I think it's going to come. I think it's going to come probably before the end of August. And what that looks like, and whether it's a drip of you get the story as they see it, and then there are other legal things that happen after that. I don't know. But I think it's going to come sooner rather than later. They're going to let the conventions run their course. They had the Senate Intel report, which in it had some pretty bad stuff. The Paul Manafort stuff was not good. The fact that they think the president did talk to Roger Stone about WikiLeaks is not good for the administration. But
the review of the FBI was not good either.
No. And the flip side is that is where really the Durham focus is. And so I think it's going to come sooner rather than later.
He is Bret Baier, Fox News anchor, #1 best-selling author of 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. Bret, thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.